So if man's purpose in life is to live in accordance with nature, what does that actually mean? It means a couple of different things, but the first thing, one of the most important parts of it is to reject everything that we would probably call like a luxury in life. So, you know, the way that we're supposed to live is simply live a simple life and drink water and not wine, eat plain food, don't eat, caviar and stuff like that. Have basic clothing but nothing fancy, and just a basic form of shelter. Don't live in a mansion. That is the way. Rejecting material possessions beyond the necessities of life, Seneca believes, is the way to realize that, nothing else really matters in life, especially material things. That, we're sort of here on this earth, and the way to live the best kind of life is not through having lots of things and, enjoying luxury in excess, but to live as simply as possible as one can, and then you can truly see that what the meaning of life is. The other part of this little Stoic puzzle is to man has to develop the gift of reason, and so reason becomes super important because that's what makes us different from animals. We've seen this with Plato, right? Already, man's rational capacities are what make him special. For the Stoics, reason has a really specific function, and that is that it lets us, using reason can allow us to conquer our emotions, especially the emotions that dominate our existence. And those emotions include pain and grief and fear and superstition. Seneca believes if we use our capacity of reason, we can overcome these emotions and realize there's nothing to be afraid of, right? This grief that I'm experiencing is not something that should be ravaging me in this way. The big thing that the Stoics are worried about, and we'll talk about this later, is liberating man from the fear of death. That is what Seneca believes is the thing that keeps men from living their full, true lives, is that they're always afraid of dying. And accepting the Stoic philosophy is to accept that we're all going to die, basically. We can't control our fate, and we can't change our fate. The only thing we can control is our reactions to our fate, if that makes sense. So instead of trying to change things, what we can't, we should focus on what we can change, and that's how we react to what's happening to us. Now, we've sort of talked about this already, but I want to put a name on what this is, like what the Stoics are aiming for here. So the goal of man, the true aim of man in life, can be summarized using, we can either use the Greek word, which is arete, or the Roman word virtus. Arete means like excellence, and virtus means basically virtue. But there are 4 components of either one of these that we're looking at. The first one is wisdom and moral insight. The second one is courage. The third one is self-control, and the fourth one is justice. So these are the things, sort of all of these pieces of the puzzle, what we should try to be in life, who we should try to be, and what we should try to aim for. The virtuous person, the good person, the best human we can be. So living the good life has all of these components. The goal of man, according to Seneca, is to be self-sufficient, to be reliant on himself for his life and not have to, worry about others. It's also to be immune to suffering and superior to the wounds and upsets of life. So not only do we have to accept our fate and what's going to happen to us, we can't complain about it, right? We have to accept that fate with dignity. So let's look a little bit at the letters from the Stoic. These are, I like to think of these as like words of advice from a friend to a friend. Seneca directed these to his friend Lucilius. We actually don't know much about Lucilius at all, outside of the fact that Seneca wrote some letters to him. We're actually not even sure if Seneca wrote these letters and sent them. Like, we don't have any evidence that these were ever, like, sent from Seneca to Lucilius, or if he just kind of wrote them all down in a journal. So, whether or not there's actual correspondence, the way to look at these, the way to look at this text is that it's basically advice from one friend to another. So I'll look at a couple of these letters today in this lecture, and then we'll focus on some of the ones about death a little later. Letter 5 is where Seneca gives his friend Lucilius basically the Stoic motto, which is to live in conformity with nature. Saying it's contrary to nature to torture one's body, to reject simple standards of cleanliness, and make a point of being dirty, to adopt a diet that is not just plain but hideous, right? So basically this says to take care of yourself, right? Don't let yourself go to hell by not bathing and not eating good food. But to keep it simple, because philosophy actually requires simple living. Now here's the thing to understand about Seneca. He doesn't practice what he preaches, and so that's something that we sort of have to confront. Seneca himself is known for he's very wealthy. He loves luxury and fancy food and wine and stuff like that. So he kind of is a hypocrite. He doesn't take his own advice on this stuff. Why he doesn't do that, I'm not really sure. It's definitely something to understand when we're looking at this text, because Seneca is telling us how to live and he's not following his own advice. So I just want to throw that out there. In letter 5, he also tells us to be that our life should be a compromise between the ideal and the popular morality. So this is where he sort of starts talking about crowds. And in letter 7, he really tells us how dangerous it can be to associate with people in large numbers. And he's really worried about like negative influence. So he says the bigger of a crowd you're around, the more likely you are to be negatively influenced by someone else. So associating with people in large numbers is harmful. There's not one of them that will not make some vice or other attractive to us. So there's something really interesting going on in letter 7 where he talks about this show that he went to, and it's not like a play or anything. The thing with Roman theater is that it's some kind of like gladiator match or something like that, and Seneca goes basically to like the halftime show of this, but even the halftime show is really bloody, and this is where Seneca criticizes the crowd for cheering basically for like a blood sport, for someone to get killed in front of a giant crowd. There are similarities here, I think, between what Seneca says and what happens in the NFL every week and in college football every week. It's on my mind a lot because it is football season, so I have a real love-hate relationship with the NFL, and I can't help but think about that whenever I read what Seneca says in letter 7 about the show he attends. Seneca also tells us in letter 7 to retire into yourself as much as you can, associate with people who are likely to improve you, welcome those whom you are capable of improving. The process is a mutual one, and men learn as they teach. So I think that's good advice, to be around people who are positive influence and people who are going to make you a better person. And you should also be around people who you can help make a better person too. Another really important part of Seneca's letters from the Stoic is what he says about slavery. So remember that we're talking about the Roman Empire here. there are a ton of slaves in the Roman Empire, and so that's why slavery is on Seneca's mind. We also talked about this a little bit when we talked about the spread of Christianity, because Christianity as a worldview is really appealing to people in bondage. So Seneca has a lot of things to say about slavery, and his views are actually really revolutionary, because Seneca says, yeah, there are people in society who are classified as slaves, but actually we're all slaves. We're all slaves to our desires, our emotions, our fears, and to our fate. So even though somebody may literally be a slave, he's actually no more of a slave than we are. So so letter 47 is where he really deals with the topic of slavery, and he's talking to Lucilius, and he says some people say that these people are slaves and that they're different from us and that they're lesser than us, and Seneca says no, they're human beings, they're friends, they're humble friends, and strictly speaking they are our fellow slaves, especially if you reflect that fortune has as much power over us as it has over them. So he asks, how about reflecting that the person you call your slave traces his origin back to the same stock as yourself, has the same good sky above him, breathes as you do, lives as you do, and dies as you do. It's that universal brotherhood thing again, right? We're all part of this same crazy world together. We all came from the same place. And another great thing that he throws in here in letter 47 is treat your inferiors in the way in which you would like to be treated by your own superiors. So there's the golden rule there. Seneca says, show me a man who isn't a slave. Someone is a slave to sex, someone is a slave to money, someone else is a slave to ambition. Every single one of us is a slave to hope or to fear, right? So it's kind of silly to talk about people in society who are classified as slaves, because we actually are all slaves. And that means that we shouldn't treat those people any differently. Going back to the golden rule, Seneca says, even more further, there's no state of slavery more disgraceful than the one that is self-imposed. So making yourself a slave to money or to sex or to ambition, that's even worse than actually being a slave. Okay, so I'm going to stop that one here, and then we will talk next time about death in Seneca. And that'll be lots of fun.